Solve the following triangle with side A has a length of 8, side C has a length of 5, and angle B equals 50 degrees. Okay. The first thing we want to do here is we want to draw out this triangle, right? We want to determine which information we have, right? Which will tell us which triangle we have, which tells us then which law to use, right? So we know that side A is 8, that is the side opposite angle A here, so that's the 8, right? Side C is 5. So that is the side opposite angle C, so that's going to be a 5 here, and angle B is 50 degrees. Okay, notice in this case we have two sides, and the angle that is between the two given sides, right? This is known as an SAS triangle. Okay? So if we want to find or solve a triangle, right? If we want to find the other angles and find the other sides of an SAS triangle, right? We have to use the law of cosines in this case. Okay. Now, there are three different versions based on just the letters, right? So that's just the letters, right? So now in this case, we want to find side B, right? So in this case, we're going to have B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2 times A times C times the cosine of B, right? Now notice in this formula, okay, we should know A, C, and angle B, which we do in this case, right? Remember, there's three different versions for the law of cosines just because there's three different letters, right? Depending on what you're given. So they're all the same. Okay? The format should all be the same. Okay, so in this case, we want to find side B. Okay? So the next step would be, let's just fill in what we know, right? Well, we want to find B. So we got B squared. So we got 5 squared plus 8 squared minus 2 times 5 times 8 times the cosine of 50 degrees. Okay. Now you want to be very careful here, right? You don't want to just punch everything into calculators. Okay. Some calculators don't know the order of operations. Okay. So we want to make sure that we put this in very carefully, right? We know that 5 squared is 25, and 8 squared is 64. And then minus, remember, it's minus this whole thing here, right? So you don't, like I said, you want to make sure you do this very carefully, right? 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times 8 is 80, right? 80 times the cosine of 50 degrees, right? This is just 89. So in this case, like I said, make sure you either put this part in parentheses, or when you do this in your calculator, right? Either way, we should get B squared. Okay. In this case, we get B squared equals 37.57 and some change after that. Remember, don't round this number, okay? Just keep it in your calculator, and then you should be able to take the square root of that. So B, in this case, will be 6.1, right? So check that out. Now we know what's the side B, right? Well, what's missing? What's missing are angles A and angle C, right? So from here, we have to use the law of sines, okay? There's no other way around it, okay? So we know that the sine of A over A equals the sine of B over B equals the sine of C over C. So let's just write down what's given, right? Well, sine of A over 8 equals the sine of 50 over 6.1 now, right? And that's equal to the sine of C all over 5. So what's unknown? What are we trying to find? We're trying to find angle A and angle C. And there's two ways to do this, right? You can use the law of sines twice, or probably the easier way is just find one of them. Right? But once we find another angle, we know that the sum of the angles is 180 degrees, right? So then we don't need to use the law of sines to find the third angle, right? Just subtract the other two from 180. Okay. So let's go ahead then. Let's find, it doesn't matter, let's find C first, right? So we'll use this proportion in order to find the value of C, okay? So sine of 50 degrees over 6.1 equals the sine of C over 5, right? We'll cross multiply, so 6.1 times the sine of C equals 5 times the sine of 50. And we'll divide out the 6.1 here, so we get sine of C equals 5 times the sine of 50 all over 6.1. Now remember, you got to be careful here, right? We're finding an angle, okay, so we have to use the inverse trig function, right? So C is going to be the inverse sine of all of this, whatever this is, right? So we can go ahead and calculate this first. 5 times the sine of 50 divided by 6.1, right? In this case, make sure you get 0.6279 ... Okay, once again, every calculator is a little bit different. It's based on how you input values in. Okay, so once you do that, the sine inverse, we should get a value here of 38.9 degrees. Okay. So once again, what's left? Okay, well, we know angle C now, right? We know angle C is 38.9. So all that's left is to find angle A. Now remember, from here, there's two ways to do this, right? You can use the law of sines again, okay? Just using this proportion to find value A, right? Probably the easier way to do this, however, right, is just to subtract 50 plus 38.9, right? Subtract that from 180, and that'll give us the value of angle A, right? So in this case, if we add these two together, we get 88.9. So 180 minus that, so then we get A equals 91.1 degrees. And there we go. We have solved this triangle. Okay, so remember, the first thing we need to do is determine which law to use based on the type of triangle that we're given. In this case, we have to use the law of cosine, so we found side B. And then to find the angles, we have to use the law of sines.